Man, Monsanto is getting hit like crazy. 3 more verdicts since we talked. Monsanto, so that's the manufacturer of RoundUp. So this is the weed killer that is causing Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Mm-hmm.
So this case, the $175 million verdict, this was in Philadelphia, came out Halloween, October 31st. And before that, on October 20th, they were also hit in Missouri for $1.25 million. So that was kind of a smaller one. $175 million on this Philadelphia one. And then just after that, San Diego, $332 million.
God. That's so interesting, though, how much these verdicts can vary. I mean, the first one, 1.2, they're probably like, oh, we can handle that. That's nothing. 175, right. Jesus Christ. And then boom, next one, 350.
Prioritizing profits.
Dangerous drug and product cases.
Welcome back. Another episode of Prioritizing Profits, Dangerous Drug and Product Cases. Another week, another show. We did unfortunately miss last week, but we're back at it, and we should be good for the foreseeable future every Wednesday.
Well, as long as you're not globetrotting, that is.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll be here at home. I love traveling. Traveling's a good time, but also I'm much more of a homebody, and flying across the world is very taxing on the body and mind.
It is, but it looks like you had a fabulous trip. So give us some details. You were in Amsterdam for Breakpoint?
Yeah. It was a ton of fun.
And just a kind of a refresher on what Breakpoint is.
Yeah, so every year there is a massive kind of crypto conference. And there's, stuff for every different chain, Bitcoin, Ethereum. But for what I primarily work on, Solana, the big event is Breakpoint, and it's hosted every year around the same time. I think last year was November, and then this year was end of October. And last year we went to Lisbon, Portugal, which was fantastic time, enjoyed it. And then this year was Amsterdam, Netherlands, which honestly I got to say I like more. The culture is just better, more my preference. Sightseeing, the architecture, just like the layout of the towns and the buildings. I mean, everything is so beautiful. Everyone is incredibly nice, and the food is incredible.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the pictures looked amazing. That's actually one place that I haven't been, but, and it used to have kind of the reputation of like a really party place because marijuana was legal there long before it was anywhere here. And I guess now mushrooms are legal, and then prostitution and all kinds of things along those. I mean, there's just beautiful pastoral places as well, and the flowers and all of that. But so tell us a little bit about what you did.
Yeah, so, Breakpoint lasts 5 days, and there's speakers every single day, and you can sign up to be a speaker. So pretty much there's people from, all across the blockchain and working on a variety of different things. And just learning about the different projects people are building, and it's a very exciting time because everyone there has the same interest and same kind of excitement for the topic of just Solana and what the potential of it.
And Solana's looking a little better. They're better these days as well, which I'm sure makes people happy.
It actually worked out well because the week before Solana pumped like 20-30% or something like that, and it kept going up during the actual event. But everyone was a little hesitant because they had PTSD from last year where Solana pumped right before Breakpoint, but then the day Breakpoint ended, or like the day after, was when the FTX collapse happened. And there was I think Solana dropped like 80% in a week. It was the most insane drop ever. So everyone was very hesitant, and
the high to it, like a major crash.
Exactly, expecting to go down, but it's been maintaining and it's been going well. And overall, the trip was fantastic. Learned about a lot of interesting products. But I think the best part is you're able to meet people you've been working with for, a year, 2 years, reconnect. I met some people last year. I saw them again this year. Met some completely new people. And it's motivating. I think sometimes when you're working behind the computer all day, you forget there's real people.
Well, and then I noticed too, I thought it was kind of interesting because whenever I do Zooms, I always have my camera on, but you're not that guy. right? Most often in our meetings, you don't have the camera on. And then you say that when you talk to all these people all over the world, nobody ever has their camera on. So then how do you even know what they look like when you meet them IRL?
Well, everyone has their PFP, their monkey.
What's a PF? Oh.
Profile picture.
Okay, but then you see them in real life. How do you know?
Well, that's why you got to get the jackets. You got to get the merch that has your little, monkey on the chest.
So then you have to go around looking at people's chests to see if, that's
will
so and so that
happen.
I'm in meetings with every week.
Yeah, there'll be sometimes you'll introduce yourself and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm blah blah blah," and you're like, "Oh my God, no way! I talk to you literally every single day." And then but that's kind of part of the fun too. Is that excitement? Is you have no idea who you're looking for, and you build a lot of these connections when you don't know, where these people live, what they look like, any of that, which feels almost a little more authentic in certain ways because you're really connecting on more of just a personality level than anything else, and then also general interest too.
Yeah, well, fascinating. Well, the other big exciting thing that you had mentioned was probably going to happen was Christina taking her banana outfit because you were there for Halloween, which I didn't know that they celebrated in the Netherlands.
Not really.
They don't.
Not really.
So what you failed to mention, though, last week was that you were going to dress up like a monkey.
Yeah. I kind of knew this was inevitable, that I was going to get roped in some way. I was hesitant because there was a big event, like one of the big events was the Magic Eden Yacht Party, and it was on Halloween, and I didn't think many people were going to dress up. I don't think Halloween's really big in Europe, and I knew there's a lot of people coming from the States, obviously, but also crypto people are sometimes weirdos. Most of the time they're weirdos.
A little bit,
antisocial.
The stereotype is nerdy.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
Maybe not big costumers.
Exactly, not the type of people you'd think would going to be dressing up and going all crazy for Halloween. So she committed to a full banana outfit.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll throw up a picture because it was absolutely hilarious with the little, banana top.
Just a little circle of her face sticking out, and otherwise she was full on banana.
Yeah, exactly. And she committed to it too with like a full black under leggings and like spandex and all that. So literally, when it was dark in the room, it just looked like a massive banana. And from the back, it was hilarious as well because it's a banana. Anyways, when we were shopping for the costume, I wasn't really planning on getting anything. We see a monkey costume, and I'm like, gosh, you just got to commit at that point.
Yeah, how can you not?
And it was comfortable, so it worked out.
And warm and cozy because it looks chilly there.
Yeah, but she was a main attraction for sure that night. I mean, everyone, we'd be walking the streets because the party was pretty far. So we're walking the streets. No one was dressed up. Like, none of the locals were dressed up, and they were just, like, yelling banana. People just walk by yelling banana, open their windows, banana. Like, they're not even saying anything else, just yelling banana, and then, we'd wave and keep on walking. But it was hilarious. Everyone had a good laugh about it, and she loves being a main attraction, main center of the room.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you guys did that. Yeah, it looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a great experience. The flight was total like 13, 15 hours.
Oh man.
We had a 5-hour layover on the way there as well.
Where did you fly? Was it not L.A.?
No. We flew out of here to Philadelphia, and then from Philadelphia to Amsterdam.
Oh, so that's a long flight just to get to Philadelphia.
Yeah. But we got premium for there and back, which is big, much needed.
You recommend.
Yeah. Anyways, that was my week. It was a great time. I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be continuing the podcast. I was fiending a little bit. I wanted to share. I was missing our fans. I was missing our audience.
We missed you.
Tell me about your week. How have you been?
My week has been a little bit nutso. We're doing some major overhaul of the landscaping because I agreed to have the company that originally did the landscape architecture at the house bring a tour group through because they're having a big conference. And so, of course, this was done like about 7 years ago, and some of the things needed a little sprucing. So there's some major sprucing, pool getting all cleaned, furniture rearranged. It's more of a project, I think, than I realized it was going to be. But it's going to look fabulous. So I'm excited about that. And then, of course, big news, your dad is here visiting from New York, and he is upstairs as we speak, cooking up a storm, like unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I cook a meal, it's, I mean, here's a main course, maybe here's a side dish.
Yeah.
He's got, I don't know how many main courses going up there, and these homemade Mexican stuff. I mean, this is like, red chili beef, green chili chicken enchiladas, calabacitas, homemade salsa. I don't know what else is going on up there, but it's been happening for, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours already.
Yeah, and I think he's just getting started. That was just the prep. It was just the prep to actually start cooking.
So we were going to be eating like kings when we were through here. It's pretty good. And I think Peter's up there acting as sous chef, or at least entertaining the chef, if not.
Doing his best. Yeah, I mean, it is the full Mexican experience for sure. He's cooking for, like, there's 15 Mexicans running around in the kitchen, but realistically it's just
there's four of
us. But yeah, like 5 main courses with 3 appetizers, and then we'll see. Maybe he throws out a tres leches cake for dessert.
Oh, geez, I don't know about that. I think he's steering clear of the sugar, so we may be out of luck on the dessert, but that might be better. But and then I think also for Christina, isn't he whipping up some
green enchiladas? Yes. Yeah, apparently that's her favorite, which I did not know, and that's one of his favorite things to make, and he's very good at it, so it worked out. And her birthday's tomorrow.
Right, tomorrow. Woohoo! Very exciting.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Yeah, I mean, last year we went to France, so this year
this year you're going to Fogo de Chao or something?
Yeah, this year we're trying to keep it a little bit more chill. We're going to Fogo de Chao. I got the reservation today. Thank God. I was a little worried I was too late and we're gonna miss it. All you can eat Brazilian meats straight off the stick or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because the only time I have ever been there was with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
We were in New York. I think it was for my law school reunion. And we met him and Dennis out for dinner, and that's where we went. And it was really interesting. I mean, they just come around to your table and ask you if you want whatever kind of meat it is, and then they slice them off and slap it on your plate. But it was really good. It was delicious. And then they have like the whole kind of buffet for sides and salads, and I mean, it can be really healthy, but it can be a lot of food. I mean,
we've talked about it a little bit on the show before. We're a little bit foodies. I don't like that term too much. I think it's kind of cringy, but we like to go out and we like to try new foods, and this is one of them that we've heard fantastic things about. It's very much down our alley of all you can eat and just kind of gorge yourself. So we've been wanting to go, waiting for kind of a special occasion, and this seemed like a good time to do that. So got that all set up and looking forward to it.
Well, you'll have to report back next week. So
I will. I'll definitely take some pictures as well, commemorate the event. But I think we should probably hop into the cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to hear updates. I mean, we've been gone for a full week now, so I'm sure that's been piling up.
We could do a 2-hour show, but don't worry, we're not going to. So we'll just try to hit on the most interesting ones, and of course get some more next week. But the first one last week the last episode we talked about the Panera death case, the young college student who had their charged lemonade, and it turns out that this stuff has huge amounts, I think 390 milligrams of caffeine, in addition to guarana extract, which is also another stimulant. Anyway, she had a pre-existing heart condition and died as a result of consuming this lemonade. And the issue, the lawsuit was filed, and the issue was that the warnings were not adequate. It's right there, it's a self-serve, and it's right there with all the other beverages. That, and they also indicated that it had about the same caffeine as their large coffee. Not accurate.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the lawsuit was filed, and since that time, all of the Panera Bread companies are now displaying enhanced disclosures so that they're actually making sure that it's more clear to customers that this is not your average lemonade, and actually warning that people with any kind of heart condition, pregnant or children should not, I think, and also pregnant women. Let's see, they say that the charged lemonade contains caffeine, should be consumed in moderation, and is not recommended for children, people sensitive to caffeine, pregnant or nursing women. So
quite the list there.
Right, but I mean, a very good result. And, and this kind of goes to I mean, it's sad that there has to be a lawsuit sometimes before these warnings are really adequately placed and people are fairly warned.
Yeah.
But they are, making the right moves here, doing the right thing, and trying to protect people moving forward. Mm-hmm. And again, this is a self-serve kind of all-you-can-drink situation. So you don't want to be pounding this crazy high-octane beverage. And, what if you guzzle a large one there, then you take another one to go? I don't know. I mean, self-serve, don't you always take one to go to?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, actually, if you're at Chipotle and you're just sitting there, I mean, that's my choice of,
I knew it would be.
Location. But yeah, I mean, you fill up, and if you're eating there, then you drink as much soda as you can, and then right before you go, you top off. But you want to get the bang for your buck.
Well, exactly. So that's the good news. We'll see how the lawsuit progresses, but at least they are now making sure that they're warning people moving forward. So hopefully we don't see any other horrible situations like this where people actually die while they're trying to just have lunch and enjoy their lemonade.
Yeah, I think that's big. The enhanced disclaimers, and I think it's interesting that they originally kind of made that argument that it's the same as their coffee.
Right.
And then after all of this happens, I'm sure they're not giving those same disclaimers to people ordering a small coffee.
Yeah.
So I think it sheds some light on how much caffeine this has, and it's you bring up a great point that it is a self-serve, kind of all you can drink, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know that they're drinking something that has even more caffeine than most energy drinks.
Yeah, like 2 energy drinks combined. I think they said Monster and Red Bull, you could combine them, and it was still more than that.
Yeah, and that's in just one large, I think it is.
Yeah. Well, and they're saying so it contains 390 milligrams, and but the maximum that can safely that a normal adult can safely consume is 400, and this is at 390. And again, it's at all
really
you can.
treading that line there.
God forbid you top it off.
Yeah.
I mean, even somebody who doesn't have a heart condition could have some negative consequences. I mean, maybe they don't die, but I mean, I just feel like crap. I mean, I know when I'm all like hopped up on caffeine, I'm shaky, I'm jittery, I'm anxious and snappy, and you don't need that. You're trying to have your lunch, then you go back to your office and you're just like a raging bitch. Not good.
You never know. I mean, maybe someone has most of their workload at the end of the day. They need to get energized for it, pumped up.
That home stretch.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they're not messing with the recipe at all. I mean, 390 milligrams. I ordered some cold brew today online, and the normal one was like 125 milligrams of caffeine, and then the double was like 250, and that was like the high end. That was they're not going to go higher than that. And I was like, okay, wow, that's a good chunk of caffeine there. But these guys, 390. You'd think after an event like this, they might take a step back and say, okay, maybe this.
Maybe just tamper it down a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it could still be charged at half that, right? Yeah. I mean, that still is a hell of a lot. I mean, that's still half of the amount that an adult can safely have. Mm-hmm. So if you really are a nutcase and it's all you can drink too.
So because it seems like they've kind of recognized that there needed to be more disclaimers, what does that mean for the lawsuit going forward? Well,
so that's actually that's an interesting question, because generally speaking, most states do have evidence rules where you cannot put in if they make changes after the case, you can't use that as evidence that they should have done it sooner.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because I mean, well, and it makes a lot of sense, because if that was used as an admission, then nobody would do it. And really, it's going to be in the public interest for people to be able to make these changes. Still say we don't think we're wrong, but
just in case we are,
But maybe it would still be a good thing if we just warn better.
Yeah.
Or fix this, or change this policy, whatever kind of case it is. Mm-hmm. So it's called subsequent remedial measures. And so if you make a subsequent remedial measure, you fix something, you make a better warning, that's not allowed into evidence in the trial. So they wouldn't be able to hear about that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I didn't know that there was a specific rule for that. But it definitely makes sense that it does, because you'd see in a lot of cases where they probably didn't expect, or obviously they didn't expect it to happen, or, a product is used in a way that they didn't expect someone to use it.
Right.
And so they want to put warning labels out there because, like you said, it's better for the general public. But at the same time, they don't want to, own up to something that I feel they're not responsible for.
Yeah, exactly. And have a weaker position than during the trial and the litigation. So yeah, that was actually an excellent question. It's so good. That's one of the things I really like about this is, I know these things because it's been pounded into my head for 35 years or so. But that's, a perfect question and in a good topic.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for. Give a nice, good, new perspective, novice perspective at times.
A good opportunity for me to do my little law professor speech.
Yeah. So going back to the case, though, is there any updates there with how that's looking? I mean, I'm assuming it's going to take some more time to really,
these cases, a year, it could be 2 years before they get to the trial. So once the case is filed, then they start the process of discovery. Sometimes there's motions to try to get the case dismissed before you do anything. But then there's the exchange of information where you start getting, they have to turn over the internal documents and the information about how it was developed and, if there's any discussions about what warnings they should have used. And likewise, the plaintiff, her family will have to turn over, her medical information. They can depose the parents, find out how often she went to Panera, if she had drank this beverage before, if it was a regular thing, what her knowledge was about the risk of caffeine, blah, blah, blah. So that process takes a long time, oftentimes, a year or more. So, and of course, there's always the possibility that the case could be resolved before trial. Yeah. But we'll I want to kind of keep an eye on this one because it's interesting, and everybody has Paneras.
Yeah, everyone has Paneras. They're all over the place, and it's not something you really expect. But it's another example. To last a year to 2 years. Thank God they're able to put the warnings on.
Right. Exactly.
Because God forbid they don't put the warnings on because they don't want to admit to anything by doing so, and then more things.
Other people have adverse consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
I would steer clear of it.
But I don't want to get too hung up on this one. What other updates do you have for us?
So I think, actually, these are a lot of things I think we talked about on the last episode. We had talked about, I think, some of the RoundUp trials that were going on. And, man, Monsanto is getting hit like crazy. 3 more verdicts since we talked. Monsanto. So that's the manufacturer of RoundUp. So this is the weed killer that is causing Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Mm-hmm. So this case, the $175 million verdict, this was in Philadelphia, came out Halloween, October 31st. And before that, on October 20th, they were also hit in Missouri for $1.25 million. So that was kind of a smaller one. $175 million on this Philadelphia one. And then just after that, San Diego, $332 million.
God. It's so interesting how much these verdicts can vary. I mean, the first one, 1.2, they're probably like, we can handle that. That's nothing. 175, right. Jesus Christ. And then boom, next one, 350. 332,
but that's pretty close. We could round up. But round up. Oh. I just caught that. That was totally unintentional. But so and what probably happened, so the 1.25, again, that's probably where the jury was looking at, okay, what's the actual damages? This person has this, has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, life-threatening cancer. How should we compensate them? The other ones, a huge portion of it are the punitive damages.
That's where they get you.
That's where they, and again, you don't get punitives unless they decide that the company was acting outrageously.
Really?
That they knew and that they continued to sell a product so that they could make money, so that they could prioritize their profits, and they completely disregarded people's health and safety and lives, and people are dying. So that's where a jury gets pissed. And I'm telling you that a 175 and a 332 million, those are pissed juries.
Yeah, those are pissed. And we've talked a lot about punitive damages, but I don't think you've ever kind of framed it that way, where it almost sounds malicious with the way that they're letting their product stay.
Yeah, it has to be extreme. It's not just accidental, oops, negligence, we didn't know. It's extreme, and it's where the jury says, how can we punish? I mean, punitive, punish.
Yeah.
And 1.25 isn't punishing a company like Monsanto that, it makes billions and billions of dollars. So how much money we got to, what's really going to be a slap to them? What's going to make them step back and say, shit, we got to stop doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear, because like you said, I mean, 350, I think, or, 330 running up, and then 175. I mean, those are some pissed juries. I would be so interested to hear, what pieces of evidence got brought up that would, trigger that type of reaction from them.
Well, and one thing that's interesting about these two cases is that they were both residential use. And so and that may have played a part in it too, because a lot of the initial cases back in the day, people only wanted the cases where people were using it in their employment. It was part of their job. They were using it all the time. It was a lot of exposure. Yeah. But these are cases, both of these, where people were using it in their yards, but they used it regularly. I mean, they obviously were better gardeners than I am. They don't need a complete overhaul before people could come to their house and check it out. But they were using it consistently, and the average person using it consistently, you don't think that that's going to be the kind of thing that's going to kill you or give you cancer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming maybe even some of those had family members as well. So, imagining the person using it obviously is at risk, but then, kids running out, they're going to the backyard, they're playing, they got
rolling
a
around
trampoline back
in the
there.
Grass.
You got dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're putting all that entire family at risk. So that does make sense. You mentioned that a lot of people wanted the cases that you would come into contact when you're working.
Like the industrial, yeah.
And is that because they're easier to pursue and prove that they had that direct contact consistently compared to residential, where it's more, you got to go through receipts and
exactly, and it's partly just your testimony. How often did you spray your weeds? But when it's an industrial, an employment situation, or like groundskeepers, those sorts of people, that day in and day out they are, using this product on the grounds. It's part of their job, so that there's a lot of exposure, and that's also going to give a stronger link. This is one of those chemicals where the more you're exposed, the more likely it is to cause harm.
Yeah.
So those would be the strongest, easiest cases in theory. But what they're saying is, hey, it doesn't take that much, it turns out. And so the average person just trying to have a nice yard is putting themselves at risk. And that's where you wouldn't think. I mean, all of us might think a little bit, hey, if I'm around these chemicals, I'm around these chemicals a lot every day. Yeah. But people like, oh, I'm going to spray my weeds once a week. That's a different thing. And so I think that they definitely did not warn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think something like pesticides, I get pretty paranoid about, because that's literally meant to, I guess weed killers kill weeds, but
kills pests.
It kills pests, yeah. Kills something that's running around. So that definitely gets me a little off-puttish there. But, I mean, that's a great point. Like, using it at home, it doesn't take that much, clearly, and those are situations where, like we said, there's families around, and so the kind of pulls on the heartstrings a little bit more, and so it makes sense. It leads to these larger punitive damages.
Well, and I think it makes it scarier too, because it's like people, and the jurors, I'm sure, were like, oh, this could have happened to me. I mean,
oh yeah,
as opposed to, well, I'm not a landscaper, I'm not a grounds person, I'm not around chemicals all of the time.
Much more relatable.
Very relatable, and then you think, okay, the number of people affected would be much smaller if it was just industrial use. But if this is for home use, residential use too, holy crap, how many people are we going to see coming down with this? How many people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people are going to be having this problem? And so if it's so bad that you can't even be exposed in these smaller doses and you didn't warn about it, and if you knew, okay, now we want to punish you.
And so I'm assuming that if this is going to go into a larger scale, it's going to be a class action, because, I mean, there's no way they can handle these insane, verdicts consistently.
Well, actually, these did settle. There was a MDL, and there was like a huge settlement back in 2020. But we're still able to take cases and then file them individually. Okay. Yeah. So they've paid up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And again, you can't use that as evidence, but clearly, they knew they were hurting, and they're still getting hit now with verdicts. So there should, I think there's a good chance there will be another round of settlements, and at least individual settlements. If anybody does have cases, these are cases we still can take.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that's so terrifying with product cases like this, where I think you mentioned it was lymphoma, right?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah,
yes.
Which I'm assuming it takes a while to really kind of be noticeable and like get into your system and really produce itself.
Yeah, not something that happens overnight.
Yeah.
Consistent exposure over time, and then as you said, it takes a long time for the symptoms to develop and the diagnosis.
Well, if and it is only the RoundUp weed killer product, right? They don't have any like off brands or varieties there.
Right. So it's RoundUp, but we had talked about paraquat as well. That's another pesticide weed killer. Is there also litigation about that?
Yeah.
But that is one where people don't buy it and use it for residential use.
Yeah.
So it's much more limited.
That makes sense. Well, if anyone is tending their garden, taking care of their lawns, and using RoundUp, definitely, I would recommend probably switching products there. And then after that, giving us a call and getting that checked out, because that's something that's really scary, and it's looking like it doesn't require as much exposure as we previously had anticipated.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on, cases that we're handling, updates on cases that we're handling. What's been going on?
Well, so back to the talcum powder, cancer and mesothelioma cases. We've talked about this a few times, the whole Texas two-step where they filed the bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. They first of all filed it in state court, and then it was appealed. Well, let's see. So the first bankruptcy was filed. It was upheld by the state court, but then the Third Circuit kicked it out. Then they refiled a second bankruptcy, proposing a larger amount of money that goes into the subsidiary to pay all of the claimants. And that time, the state court judge kicked it right out. So that was 2. Mm-hmm. And now, apparently, they are considering filing a third bankruptcy.
Didn't they say on the second one that they weren't allowed to do it for a certain amount of time?
The plaintiffs had requested that the judge tell them that they could not do it for a set period of time, and the judge denied that. So it hasn't been filed yet, but on the third quarter earnings call, somebody told us that, told the news that was a discussion that they indicated that the plan was that they would try this a third time, again, putting more money into this company, this LTL, that would then have to compensate all of the victims. And there's over 50,000 cases that are filed in the MDL right now. And again, these are really horrible, serious conditions. Ovarian cancer, a really tough cancer to survive. Not good odds on that one. You oftentimes don't know that you have the condition until it's very, very progressed. So not a very survivable cancer oftentimes. And then mesothelioma. We've talked about mesothelioma. Again, very deadly. And so, 50,000 cases and likely more getting filed all the time, because while this was all hanging out for 2 years because of the bankruptcy filings, a lot of people weren't filing. Now, with it getting kicked out twice, people have started filing more cases. But, these are big dollar cases, and the amount of money they keep trying to kick in here, no, they're not suffering. They have the money.
Yeah, they definitely have the money, and this is a way to kind of try to get a discount price on
suffering, on lives,
exactly,
death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Classic big business manipulating and taking advantage of the financial system for their own well-being.
Well, it's infuriating, and it was so refreshing and just great to hear that the Third Circuit was saying no way. Mm-hmm. Now they are saying they're going to try to appeal it to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
We'll see. But in the meantime, right now the cases are moving forward, and they're training attorneys across the country to be able to jump in and go and try these cases. I think I mentioned I threw my hat in and said, I'm willing to go to one of your trainings and go travel and try some cases.
Awesome.
But they want this, they want attorneys, and in fact, it was out in the news today that they're doing this. because they want J&J to know we're not lying down. We're going to fight this, and you're going to be scrambling, and you're going to be running all over the country trying the cases because we do have people who will jump in. And some of these firms might have 500 cases. Well, no matter how big the firm is, they can't try all of those.
Yeah.
But if a bunch of other attorneys jump in and volunteer to help, and you get thousands of cases tried at a time.
Well, and then that's the benefit of this entire system, right? Is coming together and having strength in numbers.
Yeah.
And that's being able to kind of call in your cards and say, all right, this is what we got. Throw them on the table and see if they call you.
Yeah, well, and I think it goes to the idea of the multi-district litigation, in and of itself, that again, one person, it's very hard for you to bring a case against a company like Monsanto or Johnson & Johnson or, any of these huge pharmaceutical companies. I mean, it's, what is it, David and Goliath kind of thing. Yeah. But when you have thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of cases and attorneys working together, then they can stand up. And this is a perfect example of, okay, this has been going on for 10 years. You guys have been jerking people around. So many of these people have died. They haven't survived the litigation. They never got compensated. This is just BS at this point.
Well, and it's so terrible too because they benefit if people die because then you don't have to pay for the pain and suffering, right? Pain and suffering dies with.
Well, it depends. In Arizona, that's accurate. Not in all states. That's and so in these cases too, again, have a punitive aspect because again they knew that this was causing problems since back in the 1970s, and And
you keep mentioning the Third Circuit. That's right below the Supreme Court, right? So if they appeal it, then it will go
Right. So how it works, so there's the state courts, and then you kind of go to the Court of Appeals, and then there are courts of appeals that are in different circuits.
Yeah.
But the only way that you get to the Supreme Court is where there's a division between circuits, where you have two different circuits, so basically the law of the land is up in the air.
Yeah.
And, over here they're doing one thing, and over there they're doing another. So now we need to go to the big guys, the Supremes, and say, okay, which one of these is right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So potentially, potentially it will get there. I don't, the attorneys who are involved in this are pretty optimistic that first of all, so the Supreme Court has to grant certiorari. The Supreme Court has to say, yes, we will take this case. We want to hear this case. Yeah. Because, there's ridiculous.
That was going to be one of my side questions is like, how exactly does it get in front of them? I'm imagining there's it's a Supreme Court, that's
they're a little busy.
They got a lot of stuff on their plate.
Exactly.
How far off is this going to get pushed if it needs to go all the way to them?
Well, it would get pushed off quite a while if it goes to the Supreme Court. But the kind of the consensus is it's unlikely that the court's going to want to take this on. Mm-hmm. And so there are thousands and thousands of what's called a writ of certiorari, and it's basically a pleading where the attorneys say, we think that you should hear this case, and here's why. And then the Supreme Court and their clerks kind of go through and call them out, and and then they pick the ones that are they really want to hear, and they think it's important and it was worth their time. So the consensus is that the Supremes aren't going to want to hear this, even if if it's filed, if the writ's filed. We'll see. But in the meantime, it's moving forward, and like I said, there's troops are getting trained and ready to go out there.
Yeah, rally the troops and get everyone together. And, I like the idea of them kind of scrambling and having these court cases all across the country. Yeah. And they're having to kind of, call in their backup troops as well and send them out to just all corners of the country. And like you said, David and Goliath, and really coming together and pulling all your weight together to not let these big guys push you around.
Yeah. Well, and interesting, too, this is another aspect of this that's been in the news recently, is that Los Angeles County has filed a suit against Johnson & Johnson for talc claims as well. And so this is on behalf of the county because they're saying that their residents have been affected and injured, and of course they have to pay. A lot of the state medical programs are paying the bills for these people. They're becoming disabled. There's all kinds of services that the counties are having and the states are having to pay. So the counties and states are also suing. And LA actually said that one of the reasons they're filing is that J&J specifically targeted Hispanic and African American women in this whole campaign to get them to use the talc.
Wow.
And they have the largest Hispanic community. The nation's largest Hispanic population is in California. And so they felt that, or LA County wanted to take a stand. And so what's happening is J&J is getting pressure, not just from all of these individual cases, I mean 50,000, but a lot of them, but also, some of these states and counties can jump in. And, at some point they need to, deal with the problem they've created, take responsibility.
I'd imagine that's terrifying on their part, because they're trying to just...
You hope they're terrified. Do you think they're really terrified?
I mean, you imagine with all the smaller cases and lawyers, it's like a fly swatter. They're trying to shoot them down. But then LA is a big place, and I feel like the people there in the county and the state has a lot of weight behind them. So when they bring something to the table, I think that would get them shaken in their boots a little bit. I've never heard of this happening before. Is this because it does make sense as well, because the damages, a lot of people are using the local state resources for the medical treatment and whatnot. So it is costing them money. But doesn't that happen in every case? Why don't we hear this more?
Well, it does happen, and the biggest case where it's happened a lot is in the opioid litigation, because just absolute havoc, right? Between police forces and hospitals and paramedics, and those were a lot of emergency services because people were overdosing, and so lots and lots of counties and states filed in that litigation. So it does happen. Sometimes I think it's more in the news than others. It takes a really big, ugly corporation and a big mess like opioids or this talc. But talc is rising to that level now where they are jumping in.
And so what does that look like? Is there an attorney or a group of attorneys that represent a county?
Right, yeah. So there are county attorneys and deputy county attorneys. So it's within the governmental system. The governmental attorneys are filing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that makes sense. And I think it's good that they're kind of getting pressured from several different sides of it, because they've clearly been pushing this off for a very long time. And now it almost makes more sense that they're trying to do this Texas two-step, because they're probably thinking that this is going to get pretty bad. And the punitive damages you mentioned earlier, we saw how big they can get with RoundUp. Even in a case like this, especially where they're targeting specific demographics, I would imagine that we're going to see some big ones.
Well, there have been huge verdicts in the talc, which is why they wanted to file bankruptcy in the first place. But again, even as huge as they are, they could afford to pay them. But another aspect of this, and I think we have touched on this briefly, but they did agree in 2020 that they were going to stop producing and selling talc-related products. But the deal was that they're going to end worldwide sales in 2023. So still today, you can buy the products. They're not going to, they're going to wind it down by 2023. And in fact, when Fernando had baby Haley at the hospital, he actually sent us a photo because they had it was kind of like a what do you call it? Like the machines where you can buy sodas and things, a vending machine. They had a vending machine for baby products there in the hospital, and he sent a shot of, there was a little bottle of Johnson's baby powder that you could put your money in and buy, in the maternity ward, for God's sakes.
That's insane.
Isn't that crazy? So, it's still out there. But again, they are going to stop selling it. But like we were talking with the subsequent remedial measures, that information would never come in at a trial. Although at this point, the public has probably heard about this ad nauseum.
You'd think so, but honestly, I'd never heard of it until we started this podcast. I think that this is a product that so many people use, and it's an everyday thing. If you have babies or if you have any type of uncomfortable rashes or anything like that,
right?
But
so it's a product that they tell women as feminine hygiene to use every single day after the shower.
Yeah.
So it's something, again, you're going to use it, if you use it, if you're a believer, you're going to use it every single day.
Yeah, hopefully this kind of starts coming to a close here. It's good that they are winding down 2023. They got another 2 months here.
To keep killing people.
And, I guess they're going to need every dollar they make because they're really struggling out here with the magnitude of cases.
Well, we're going to keep fighting it.
Yeah. What else do we have on the docket?
So this is somewhat similar to what we were talking about with Paris Hilton. As you know, she's been very involved in pursuing cases against the troubled teen industry and these, wilderness camps and camps for troubled teens. So in Washington State last week, there was a big settlement in a kind of similar case. So $17 million settlement. And this involved a dozen former residents of what was called the J Bar D Boys Ranch. And this is a little bit different because it was a state-run or state-licensed group home. And the settlement was actually against Washington State because the courts had sentenced these boys to be placed in the home, and then or in this ranch home. And so then when they were there, they were physically and sexually abused. A lot of the same situations that we talked about, in the places that Paris had been and other teens. But this was actually a state-sanctioned one, and so the state ended up settling $17 million.
Wow.
Again, 12 of these former residents, but it's expected that there are many, many more people who went through this facility and potentially have claims and could bring claims. And I wanted to bring this up just in the context that it's not just these private entities that we talked about during the prior podcast. It can also be state-run homes. But if teens are sentenced to these homes and they do experience this kind of abuse, physical, sexual, they are entitled to bring a lawsuit, and these cases are certainly ongoing. And cases that we're definitely looking into, and happy to talk to anybody if they are interested in pursuing something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, that is just absolutely awful. I think I can't even imagine being sent somewhere from the state, you have no option. It is the authoritative figure. Right. Authority itself is telling you to go somewhere to a location that they fund and that they're, running essentially, and then all these terrible things happen.
Mm-hmm. And the evidence was that there were a lot of complaints, and that they did know that there were problems going on, and yet they continued to send. And then these are people who would be in juvenile court who had gotten into some sort of trouble, but sometimes relatively minor things, and kids as young as 10 years old, from 10 to 15 years old, while they were at this ranch and getting just horrendously abused. And it's really just, destroyed some of their lives. We're talking about, some of them have been in and out of prison, were unable to finish their educations, even graduating from high school. It's very damaging and really an outrageous situation.
Well, and it's one of those things where as, this comes to light, more people begin to speak up as well.
Exactly. And why Paris wanted to come forward, because she was very hesitant. She didn't want this to be like, her legacy, her story, until she realized that she kind of needed to do that. As a public figure, she needed to step up and, and help other people. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, as these cases come out, as people hear about it, maybe they didn't think they could do anything about it. Well, the state put me there. What am I going to do?
That's a great point.
Right?
I'm sure there's a lot of people that thought about that. And especially, I think you mentioned this with the Boy Scout cases as well, is that there is a increase on the time that you can submit a case. Yeah,
absolutely. So, if you were abused as a minor, and this varies state by state, and some of these statutes are continuing. They're continuing to open them up. Some states don't have any statute. Some have windows. So it's very important that you get in touch with an attorney who's familiar with this type of case. But don't think that because it happened a long time ago that you don't have a case. You absolutely might. And these cases are, it's one of these things that it feels like there's just been this whole wave of people coming forward, and the laws are changing, kind of almost like that, the Me Too. For the longest, right? For the longest time, they could just sexually harass people. That was it. The casting couch, it was just an accepted thing. It's what you had to deal with. And all of a sudden, the tide turns, and it's not acceptable. It's not put up with. People are going to jail. People are getting sued.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's happening with this whole troubled teen industry now.
Yeah.
It was pushed under the rug for too long. And it's young, troubled kids. I mean, they don't think they're going to be believed, and sometimes they aren't.
Yeah.
But there's a big surge right now in these types of cases, and thank goodness.
Well, and it's insane. It's insane to me that this is state, ran and funded. The state's sending them there, and they were receiving all of these complaints, and it's almost known. I'm shocked that there's not a prison time. Like, this isn't a criminal case as well. This is just against the state. Like, who's running these programs? Who's receiving these complaints? There has to be some type of oversight over those individuals, no?
I mean, well, the sad thing, too, is that, it's kind of like that stereotype of governmental workers. They're underpaid and overworked. And, you hear that in so many, the areas, with the Child Protective Services and those all of those kinds of things. I mean, so many things kind of fall through the cracks because they're not, it's just not well funded and well staffed and that sort of thing. So I imagine that's going to be the argument. But I don't know if there have been any criminal prosecutions or if there's any attempt. It's pretty tough to do that.
Yeah.
But in cases, where children are getting abused, damn it, I think you should, make every effort.
Yeah, and I'm sure in that case alone, I mean, they probably mentioned some specific names and individuals, and there has to be, some consistency there. And so I'm surprised that it doesn't lead to any type of criminal investigation. But
I mean, these were the cases they were talking about. The people were there for anywhere from the late 1970s to the mid 1980s.
Wow.
Who knows? I mean, these people may be retired, maybe dead.
Yeah.
I mean, that's come up a lot, like with the Boy Scout cases where the troop leaders, again, these happened many, many years ago, but, it's never too late.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a good thing that this is not only coming to light, but that this is turning into a case, because I wouldn't think that this type of topic would be pursued in the courts. When the Boy Scout cases first came up, I was kind of surprised, and as you explain it, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
There's an incredible amount of damages that you kind of touched on with struggling to go to school and being in and out of the system. But I think it also speaks to the kind of the time on it where some of these things happened so long ago, and now it's better late than never.
Right. Well, one other thing I want to mention too, part of the reason why these cases hadn't happened before is that it's very hard for a victim of this type of abuse to come forward.
Yeah.
And in the Boy Scout cases, because it was primarily male-on-male, sexual abuse, they were very uncomfortable and didn't want to ever tell anybody. Some of my clients had never even told their wives that this had happened to them as a child or a young man. And so I think it's the same kind of thing here. A lot of them don't want their names out there. They don't want other people to know about it. And so one of the important things is that you can, you don't have to have your name out there. I mean, you can file, you can file a John Doe kind of complaint.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are ways to protect your privacy in these cases. Now, there are going to be circumstances where you still, you may need to testify, but there can be limitations placed on that, a lot of protections. And so if somebody is hesitant, I think it's important to at least, you can talk to an attorney confidentially and find out exactly what, depending on the facts of your case, what you would need to, what the level of your participation would need to be. And in cases like this, where there are, say, 12 people coming forward, again, if there's, and like in the Boy Scouts cases, it's a little different because it was in bankruptcy, so there's never going to be a trial per se.
Yeah.
But there are ways that you can be protected, but you don't have to stay silent. You can come forward. It's worth checking it out. And again, talk to an attorney who, you want to be somebody who's trauma informed, who's very comfortable, who understands the law, and you're okay talking to.
That's a good point too. That's something that I didn't even think about, is not only with the trial and kind of the fear of having to not only tell one other person, right, your attorney, but I can't even imagine having to, be deposed or go and explain these things in front of a jury.
Yeah,
that has to be an absolutely terrifying thought and experience. So it is great that there are those protections out there, and to make it a little bit easier and, promote people speaking up about it, because I think it's not going to stop until,
exactly.
people come out and say something.
And so many of my clients that I have spoken to have said, I feel like I need to do this to make sure it doesn't happen to other people. And there's, again, if people don't speak up, these problems continue. Yeah. The abuse continues. The sexual harassment continues, like in the Me Too. In any of these contexts, it takes really strong people coming forward and doing the hard thing to stop these predators, to punish them, and to make the system change.
Well, if anyone has had any experiences, we are taking these cases, and we have experience with it with the Boy Scout cases, which I know you've talked to me a little bit about. It's very difficult on both sides of it, obviously, kind of listening to these stories and whatnot, but it's necessary. It's necessary to kind of get the stories out there and make sure that this doesn't continue.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't want to end up the show on such a
no.
Here. We are coming to a close. I wasn't sure if you wanted to touch on to any questions or comments.
Sure. Let's hit on to a quick question before we go and enjoy our Mexican feast.
Yes.
So we did have a question, and it's come up a couple of times in different ways, but the question is, I had another attorney, they turned down my case. I don't understand why. And actually over the years I've gotten calls like this. And, it's unfortunate because there are some attorneys who, when, they take a case, they go through the intake, they do the investigation, and then they just send this very brief, sorry, we can't help you letter, which I really don't like.
Yeah.
And then there are other attorneys who will send will actually call and speak with the client and explain what the problems are and why it's not a case that they want to pursue. But we do oftentimes have people call us, and we look at the cases sometimes. But the first bit of advice I would offer is that if you have been represented by this attorney, they owe you an explanation. So yes, I might send you this very short letter. Give them a call, ask them to explain it to you. There are so many different reasons why a case might not be viable. And quite frankly, many times I've had to tell people this isn't a case that makes sense to litigate. And initially they might be angry, but then when I kind of walk through that process and show them, sometimes, for example, it's something really bad happened, but luckily they weren't injured. I have so many times heard people say, I could have died. And I'm like, you absolutely could have, but you actually didn't suffer an injury. You see this a lot with like the medications. They gave me the wrong medication. If I would have taken it, I could have died. Well, the person looked at the pill and said, "Whoa, this looks different. I don't think this is the right thing." They didn't take it. Again, there are things that you can do, but a lawsuit doesn't make sense because it costs a lot of money to pursue, to file, to do all of this. But then all you can collect is the value of your injuries. Yeah. And if you were luckily not injured, it doesn't make sense. So, those kind of cases, once I kind of explain it, and airbags are another big one. Oh my gosh, so many people like, my airbag didn't go off, I want to sue. I'm like, well, did your head hit the windshield? Did you go through the windshield? No.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, that's not a good case. In fact, if it had gone off, those airbags could cause some pretty big damage. You're probably lucky that it didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, but those are just like kind of two examples. But, ask your attorney to explain it. If the attorney is, really a crappy attorney who's not willing to explain why they turned down your case, you can call other attorneys. Oftentimes, we have been able to, take a look or even just, get the spiel from them about what happened and give them, this is probably what it is, and this is why we wouldn't take it, and get some answers.
It makes sense. I think, we've touched on a lot how people kind of insinuate you can sue for anything, but that's just not the case.
Cannot.
and a lot of the time it's just not in the interest of the attorneys, right? Like they're putting their time and money towards it. And so there's cases.
And reputation. You're not, a good attorney is not going to file a frivolous case. They're not, you're going to lose money, you're going to damage your reputation. The client's not going to be happy because they're not going to get anything anyway. But that being said, then there are sometimes where it's a very strong case, but the statute of limitation has passed. Or maybe it could have been a strong case, but the evidence wasn't preserved. And, you see this a lot of times. Well, this product damaged me. Well, where's the product? Well, I threw it away. Oh, and how are we going to prove it?
Yeah.
If it's not something that was consistently happening over and over again, like the air fryers or things like that. So there are certain circumstances where, you have to say to somebody, we can't prove the case. I believe that this happened to you and it really sucks, but we can't win in court.
Well, I think it's really important, like you mentioned, for the attorney to kind of explain the reason behind it.
Come on.
Yeah, I think that's the minimum, right? The bare minimum that you can do, because I think a lot of the times when someone's bringing a case, it's a terrible experience that they had, or they got injured or something along those lines, but it's something that's important to them, and that's, if anything, it can be traumatic most of the time.
Yeah.
And so if you feel strongly enough to take it to an attorney, that attorney, owes you at least the explanation on why they're not pursuing it or why they can't pursue it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but that's a question that's come up a lot, and it had come up again recently, kind of in the context of some of those earplug cases. And anyway, so we wanted to throw that answer out there for everybody.
I think that was a fantastic answer. If anyone does have any other questions or concerns or comments, throw them down in the comment section in YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you're seeing this. And if it's something that you don't feel like you want to throw on to, the public forums and the public comments, you can also email us, podcast@showardlaw.com. It can be questions, comments, or even a story. If there's something that you want to share, you want us to kind of touch on or talk about, to share experiences with other people, and maybe try to, other people to avoid it, whatever it is. We're here. We're happy to listen. We're happy to
reach out,
talk
please.
about it. But thank you all for tuning in. It was a fantastic show. I had a good time. I'm happy to be back.
Oh, we're happy to have you back, Benny.
We're looking forward to the future, looking forward to next week, and we'll see everyone around.
Prioritizing profits. Prioritizing
dangerous drug and product cases.